Where am I? Oh, yes. I've been involved in doing a few plays over at the Black Box Theater with my friend and wonderful actor to work with, Algernon Demasa. And we've been doing an Iliad every night. When we're not doing an Iliad, we're busy killing Buddha. And let me explain. So we're doing this play that we developed called Killing Buddha, and it's based on this this Chinese proverb about, it says, if you see the Buddha, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. See, you got to you get it? Oh, good. And if you don't get it, we're doing it again at 2:30 this afternoon. So it's our last show, thankfully. So every time we go into the theater, we ask each other, "What are we doing again today? You know, is it the Odyssey? Is it Buddha? Is it Iliad? I don't know. Is it Panchavia?" So I'm happy to be here. We've been hearing wonderful inspirational messages about love, falling in love with love. What a beautiful title, Falling in Love with Love. So I'm going to be talking today about what love is love is not, and of course, what's love got to do with it, right? So who wrote the book of love? Love me tender. All you need is love. To know him is to love him. Endless love. Stop in the name of love. Will you love me tomorrow? Love will keep us together. I've got a love hangover. I love you even though. Well, Rumi said it a little better. He said, however much I might try to expound or explain love, when I come to love itself, I am ashamed of my explanations. Love alone cannot explain the mysteries of love and of lovers. If you've read anything from Rumi, he talks about love all the time, a passionate, fiery love. I mean, it's this guy, well, he was in love with love, absolutely, and he lived it every single day. But that's kind of the thing about love, right? Love's like a physical condition. It's almost like the flu, you know, sweaty palms, heart palpitating, upset stomach. Are you sure you don't have the flu? You're not in love, Martha? It could be. She's not feeling well this morning, so we send her as much healing as possible. You know, when you do fall in love, it's like you're addicted, you're obsessed, obsessive thinking, like OCD. You know how you say, I can't stop thinking. Anytime I close my eyes, all I think about you. You're so distracted. Crazy hormones flood your body. Did you know that falling in love activates the same parts in the brain that's activated with cocaine addicts? Researchers have found that the dopaminergic subcortical systems in the brain lit up the same parts of people who were in love, reportedly in love, as cocaine addicts. When this area of the brain starts working, it releases these beautiful things like oxytocin and endorphins and cortisol, these beautiful things that make you actually a little crazy, a little nauseous. There's something called vasopressin, which can also lead to aggression and territorial behavior. That's why when you see someone talking to someone you're in love with, you're like, hey, wait a minute. So, isn't it amazing that we've evolved to experience love like this? You know, we're really nothing but our ancestors walking at any given time. And we've evolved to experience love, you know, in a way that ensures that we continue on as a species, of course, and that makes us be loyal to each other, to be protective of each other, to form into groups and tribes and that kind of thing. So this physical love thing that I referred to, I call it a condition. The reason I do call it a condition is because, well, the love I'm talking about here, it's conditional. It's something that we can take away when we feel that our conditions unnecessarily aren't being met. Ultimately, love is love, right? And condition is condition. They should have nothing to do with each other. You know, Martha's reading, she referred to what Ernest Holmes, he has these great, if you haven't read the Science of Mind textbook, if you look in the back part of it, there are these great meditations. They're little short stanzas. And this one, he talks about how love dissolves fear. Love casts out all fear. I would really recommend that go check the bookstore and look in the back of them. They're just meditations you can spend time with and just really integrate and really try to internalize. But he was talking about, what Ernest Holmes was talking about is not what I'm talking about here, which we're going to migrate to now. But he also says, this is the most important thing that I learned from the Science of Mind. Ernest Holmes said, if you look deep enough at any situation, you'll find love. Now, how does that make you feel when you hear that? When you look at the world today, pick up the headlines, thinking, any situation, Randy, are you sure? But you don't know my neighbor, you don't know my coworker, And that's okay, I don't. So when you look deep enough at any situation, there is love. There is always love. And the more that we focus on that, the more we understand that, the more we'll be able to navigate this world with love, as opposed to its opposite. Fear, of course, love has no opposites. It's just love. And we'll talk about that in a moment here, too. But also, as A Course in Miracles so eloquently states, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. So if you substitute love, love is the only real thing. Anything unlike love doesn't exist. Herein lies the peace of God. So here's the premise. Only love is real. Rumi wrote, whatever you know or don't, only love is real. So let's talk about checking in with love first before we leave the door. You know how we make sure that we lock the door, we make sure that, the stove's off, we make sure all kinds of things are done. Well, if we check in with love before we leave the door, it's really going to transform how we experience the world. As students of New Thought, the New Thought movement, which essentially says, it's an idea that says that life happens through us and never to us. So life happens through us, never to us. We're channels, we're those conduits. So we also understand that love is all there is. And we can restate and say that only love is real, like I said, and nothing unlike love exists. We understand that everything we experience or learn is either based in love or in fear. You've all heard that, right? We're acting out of fear or we're acting out of love in any situation. I remember when that concretely sunk into my head, and I found myself having an argument with somebody, and I just surrendered. I said, it sounds like we're choosing to love through fear right now. How about we change that, because that's no fun. So fear can be said to be a blockage or a turning away from love, a failure on our part to surrender to love unconditionally. Essentially, fear is forgetting to check in with love, like I said, before we leave the door in the morning. In A Return to Love, Marianne Williamson, she writes, the mind that's separate from God has forgotten how to check in with love before it saunters into the world. Don't you love that? Without love, our actions are hysterical. Without love, we have no wisdom. In other words, when the ego tries to say, I can do this, I'm going to make things right, well, that's when we lose wisdom. That's when we're hysterical. Love's funny, isn't it? So many books and plays and songs and movies and poems, they've all tried to figure out what exactly love is. Yet we might think it's making other people feel good or feeling good about other people. Like we say to our lover, you make me so happy. Or we say, I love chocolate. Or in my case, I love green chili. Almost as much as red. Well, it depends on the day. And then there's love of country, there's love of what others think of us, there's love of family, there's love of friends, all of it conditional. Then social media came along and gave us this like button. What's up with that, All of a sudden, we're like, do they like me? Like me? Really? Just like me? I'll post a picture of my cat. I'll post a picture of, whatever, just like me. So I've been around friends, and they're hooked on their Facebook, on their social media, and they go, oh my God, I already have 6 likes on this, and I just posted it, and that kind of thing. And just, they can put that thing down, What's that doing to us? Well, it's saying that if we represent ourselves to the world in a way that others like, well, they are going to like us. They're going to feel affection towards us. Advertisers know this well, don't they? They pair seemingly emotional scenes with a really nice product and good lighting, slow motion, and then the violins swell. I watch the news in the morning on CBS because that's the only thing I get over my rabbit ears. And so I'll be watching it, and I've noticed in all these commercials for prescriptions, that's all there are in the mornings, cars and prescriptions. And the prescription ones, they'll show somebody being really sad. I did something about my IBS, and then all of a sudden, the sun's shining through, and they're driving a new car, So. Well, that's not what love is, okay? Let's take a huge leap and proclaim that actually love is all there is. This love with a capital L, like I call it, it's an energy. It's an energy. It's a force that permeates everything, everyone, every time, every dimension, everything that ever has been, everything that ever will be. Thought is actually energy too. The emotions are a response to that thought. When we have a thought, we release emotions. We release chemicals in our body. We release these hormones. They're instantaneous. So if somebody pulls in front of you and you have a thought about them, well, you're going to feel that thought. It's just chemical, Although yesterday on my way to the theater, I'm driving up my street and all of a sudden this car comes right into my lane, and I'm thinking, so I'm honking and say, hey, I'm here, I had some choice thoughts. I'm not sure how many were loving, but I'm working on it. So, like I said, the emotions are a response to your thought, and feelings are a response to that emotion. So I'm setting this all up because I want to make it distinctively clear that this thing that we celebrated on the 14th of February, that's a different kind of love. That's a romantic ideal about love. And when we don't achieve that ideal about love, well, it can lead to some disappointments. It can lead to some anger, to some resentment, to some sadness, to some depression. But the love I'm really talking about is never going to let anyone down, ever, ever, ever. You know that the average person spends $147 for Valentine's. I know you're all like, I didn't. What's wrong with you? So I was in Albertsons the day after Thanksgiving, and so I was all these flowers that just looked like a massacre or something. And then they were selling all of their gift bags for half price and everything. So I was talking to the cashier and I said, "Wow, it looks like love exploded in here." And he said, "Oh man," he said, "you should have seen it yesterday," which was Valentine's Day on a Sunday. He said these poor guys were all walking through with $89. They had Valentine's gifts, I don't know, gift packets or something. And he said they looked really nervous, and and their flowers were all beaten up, and then he said his buddy took his partner to that Australian restaurant, and they plopped down about $75, and they didn't even have wine. So wow, stay home and make some enchiladas, man. Watch a movie. Anyway, that's just talking about a different thing. Okay, A Course in Miracles proposed that the problem with the world, this is really interesting, is that we have strayed from God, or that we wandered away from love. That this Course in Miracles talked about how the separation happened millions of years ago, that we separated ourselves from God. But then it also suggests that maybe that never really happened, and maybe it's happening with every thought. We're a violent, angry, judgmental species, unfortunately. But because of that, we've projected onto God, this idea of God, we've projected those chaotic characteristics and then write stories to make it so. We kind of authored up God into our own image. In other words, a punishing being that you have to please at every moment, and that, to me it kind of sounds like what we've also made our parents into. If we please other people, our life is going to be good. So then carry this idea of conditional love and acceptance into our relationship with our lovers and our families and our coworkers and friends, Texans and Republicans and Democrats. Oh, I'm sorry. Yada, yada. Anyway, pretty soon we're at war with everyone. And that's fear-based, and that's some crazy stuff that we've gotten into, and has nothing to do with this beautiful, high resonating energy of love. And I just wanted to point that out, because what I was talking about, love being conditional. And so let's talk about what love really is. Well, what I tell myself every time that I feel like I'm not acting out of love, I tell myself, remember to surrender. Remember to surrender. Because love, that's what I'm surrendering to, is God, and God is love. If you use the word love in place of God, then you begin to understand the mental transformation that needs to happen, I think. Like, for instance, for so many of us, God is still that thing that's out there looking down on us, judging us, doling out something good to you, doling out something bad to you. But we know better, because we know life happens through us and never to us. So there's this affirmation that I've used for a long time, and it says, there is no spot where God is not. Anyone know that one? Okay, so substitute love in there. Now we're going in the equation here that God is love and love is God. There is no spot where love is not. Does that feel a little easier? Does that rest a little easier with some of you maybe? For instance, instead of saying there's no spot where God is not, if we say there's no spot where love is not, isn't that a little more gentle? And they're really the same thing. So the title, whatever you want to call it. There's, I say things like love goes before me and paves the way no matter where I'm going, especially when I'm going on a really long trip. Love goes before me and paves the way. Love goes before me and makes everything easy. See, love can't see or think with judgment or with anger. Love denies anything unlike itself. Love is that light into the darkened cave. Love is the energy and the power behind every good thing. I like to think of love as being like electricity. It's always there, it's always on, but unless you turn on a switch and plug it in, guess what? You're going to be in the dark. You can't watch Netflix. My late partner was in and out of a morphine coma before he made that final transition home. That's what I like to call it. And it was pretty agonizing. Anyone that's ever cared for anyone going through cancer knows it's really kind of intense and it's hard to watch. And so I would sit there, not knowing what to do, but I would ask for guidance. And I know I've told this story here before, but it's instructive to what I'm talking about. So just a couple of days before the transition, all of a sudden this lucidity and clarity came up, looked at me right in the eye and said, "I love you. I'm sorry. Thank you." And then, and 2 days later, gone. And what a gift that was. But the way that I look at that, the way, when I reflect back on it, is that love was the only thing keeping me strong, keeping me sane, keeping me real, because it was an unconditional love of two people that cared for each other, not the romantic love, not the Valentine's flower buying, chocolate buying love. But I understood it wasn't an exclusive love. It was the love, the big love. And I felt so at peace about everything. When I remembered to surrender, I let go, I released. I knew this is natural, this is real, this is good. Soon as I was fear-based, that's when the problems would start. That's when, this person didn't show up for that appointment, or this didn't happen, or that happened. And I felt panicky, I felt self-centered, I felt overwhelmed. And that's what happens when we're in fear as opposed to love. When I was remembered to surrender to love, I felt okay with everything. People on the phone would even recognize it. I remember the hospice, and I'm so glad that the hospice will be here this afternoon. the nurse who came, he just happened to be a good friend because I had been a volunteer at hospice for many, many years, which I still do. I play my flute there. And so he told me, he said, I don't know what you're doing, Randy, but the nurses at hospice like to take your call. They said it's so soothing. They feel so relaxed. I said, well, it's because I was in peace. I had surrendered to love. They were tapping into what I was giving off, what I was broadcasting. All that I was broadcasting, what I was allowing to happen through me. And just a beautiful synchronicity. The last song I always play at hospice when I'm there is Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So thank you, Mary Lynn. She's awesome. Is your voice doing okay, dear? So it almost may seem contradictory to surrender to love or to check in with love before we saunter out into the world. But when we do, we let our true nature, the true nature that is, take charge and flow through. There's nothing more that we need to do. Anything else, anything other than checking in with love before we saunter out into the world, anything else is like surfing or paddling upstream, to paraphrase Abraham Hicks. Like I said, anything we're reacting to or acting is either out of fear or out of love. And at any moment, we can check in with that. Any moment allows that opportunity to be able to check in, am I in fear or I am in love? And this is how you do it. When you feel that panic setting in, that anger, that depression, that you want to let someone have it, what you ask yourself is, what would love have me do in this situation? What would love have me do in this situation? You can use God. I think love is an easier entry word into that feeling. What would love have me do in this situation? And rest with that. And it will come to you. It has to. Miriam Williamson in A Return to Love, she came up with that whole notion of everything's either a grievance or a miracle. I'm sure you've all read about that. Everything's a grievance or a miracle. What I learned to do some years ago, over a decade ago, and I'm so grateful that this lesson came to me, this phrase that says, I release this grievance and I choose the miracle. I release this grievance and I choose the miracle. You know what the miracle is? What? Love, a return to love. That's what she means by the word miracle. I release this grievance and I choose the miracle. In other words, it's a shift back to love. Try it next time that happens. And since only love is real, well, it's really just a returning to who we are, to what we've always been. Like I said earlier, we're the authors of our own fear, and we can rewrite that with every single thought. Fear is an illusion. It's an illusion distorting our vision of the world. Love is like having a new prescription. You know what that's like? You're like, can't see it. All of a sudden the ground seems a whole lot closer. You reach for something, you miss it. Well, that's how you should be looking, through love-colored glasses, So, love is, love in your mind produces love in your life. Love in your mind produces love in your life. And this is heaven. Fear is a separation from love. It's a separation from God. Love is a return. So next time you're in fear, ask that your fear be flooded with the light of love. Say to yourself, I am willing to see this differently. You know what a dramatic shift that can happen? I'm willing to see this differently. I do that a lot. I'm willing to see this differently. I'm really willing to see this differently. All right already? Sometimes you got to be emphatic. So say I'm willing to see this differently, or I'm willing to see this through the eyes of love. And then sit in the stillness and the quiet. And what I like to imagine, that love is permeating me like a big mountain hot spring. Faywood's one of my favorite places. And so I just imagine, that's love, baby. Tell yourself over and over that I live and move and have my being in love. I am that love. That love is me. I am love. But there were a couple of dudes who said it a little more succinctly. I'm not good at writing pop songs. I write these complicated, deep songs. But these two dudes, they said, there's nothing you can know that isn't known. Nothing you can know that isn't known. Nothing you can see that isn't shown. There's nowhere you can be that isn't where you're meant to be. It's easy. All you need is love. Bum, bum, ba-da-da. All you need is love. Bum, bum, ba-da-dum. All you need is love. Love. Love is all you need. And so it is.